You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. Okay, legend is a pretty big word, and I'm sure that our guests on today's episode of the podcast are just too humble to embrace such an idea. But we have no problem calling them what they deserve to be called, and that is legends. Today, we return to 3 conversations recorded at B&H-hosted conferences and present segments of our talks with Keith Carter, Joyce Tenneson, and Doug Kirkland. For those of you unfamiliar with their work, do yourself a favor and check it out. But in the meantime, a big announcement. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be holding a Fujifilm sweepstakes, the B&H Photography Podcast Fujifilm X-H1 sweepstakes. For those that remember our last sweepstakes, this is sure to get your attention. We're going to be giving away 2 prizes. The first is a Fujifilm X-H1 mirrorless digital camera with a 35 f2 lens, and the second prize is a Fujifilm X-E3 mirrorless digital camera with a 23mm f2 lens. The sweepstakes is scheduled to start July 26, 2018 and end on August 15th of the same year. More details will be forthcoming, so keep listening to find out the official entry rules, but you can be sure that subscribing to the podcast will be part of the deal. So if you're not a subscriber, what you waiting for? We also want to give a shout out to a listener who left us a great review on iTunes. So PJC56 must be French. We really appreciate your feedback, and thanks for suggesting Michael Paul Smith and his Elgin Park series as a topic for an episode. Great stuff. Please keep those reviews and suggestions coming in. We really do appreciate the feedback. Now on with the show. Keith Carter is an artist, author, educator, and as we found out, an occasional musician. His photography is housed in numerous private and public collections, including the National Portrait Gallery, the Art Institute of Chicago, the San Francisco Museum of Art, and the George Eastman House. He's published 11 books, including From Uncertain to Blue, Mojo, and A Certain Alchemy. To say his work is dreamlike, or that he's a poet of the ordinary, would just be stealing from Wikipedia. But his large-format work draws from the animal world, pop culture, folklore, and religion, and the images are drop-dead gorgeous. Here's Keith. We are being joined by Keith Carter, who is the keynote speaker at Optic 2018 this year. And Keith's great enough to join us. And your topic at your last talk, just before being here, was Rollin' and Tumblin' 12-bar photo technique. You got to explain it.
Well, I'm a closet musician. I play the guitar, and it occurred to me once that in Western music there are actually 12 notes in an octave. If you play the piano, there's a C, D flat, D, and you keep going up each half step back to C. If you play the guitar, you start on E, F, F sharp, G, and same thing. There are 12 notes. And so on a long plane ride back from Europe, I was thinking, well, I wonder if there's some sort of correlation in the world of photography. Certain notes that everybody plays all the time, but you play them differently. Mm-hmm. So every Western melody you've ever heard are made with those same 12 notes. The thing is, not everybody uses all those notes. And to make it more complicated, it occurred to me that if you play the blues, B.B. King or Eric Clapton, et cetera, you play the minor pentatonic scale. The point of that is that's only 5 notes. So all those great melodies are really just 5 notes. And it occurred to me that, well, in photography, a person such as myself, I probably play the blues. I play about 5 notes. A lot of digital photographers play a lot of notes, It depends on what kind of melody you wish to evolve.
It's the combination of the notes that counts, right?
Yeah, and how they're played and what they sound like. Mm-hmm. So essentially it was a Texas metaphor.
Okay.
Or as we say, metaphor.
All right.
Now, could that be compared to, and I brought this up a bunch of times before, where I talk about visual signatures, and I always joke that I've only taken 4 or 5 pictures in my entire life, that they're all Same exact composition, different subject matter, but I tend to look at what it is I'm photographing, frame it to fit this thing that seems to click in my head, and I go. Is that similar to what you were just talking about, referring to as being 6 notes or 4 notes or 5 notes?
I suppose there's a certain similarity, but when I broke it down, for example, your subject matter. Mm-hmm. What do you find interesting in the world? That's probably your root note.
Okay.
What do you find interesting? Depth of field. What is in focus from foreground to background? That's a classic technique. In photography, are you going to use f/22 where everything's in focus, or are you going to use f/1.2 where only one thing's in focus? That's a note. That's a critical decision for you to play or to make.
Would that be a note or a phrasing?
Well, I suppose you could argue it either way.
Okay.
But you'd have to buy me a beer to go into that. Okay?
You don't know him that well.
So far I got a beer from him and a print from Joyce Tenneson. This is good. Okay.
Anyway, it's a half-baked theory, but I liked it a lot. And then, as most of us are interested in our own work, I thought, well, basically I play the blues. I play the minor pentatonic. I have a certain subject matter I like. I use generally short depth of field. I tend to use an oblique angle rather than place your camera straight in front of something. I put it off to the side just a tad, and I tilt it just a tad, which breaks the perspective. Mm-hmm. That's a note. I like things to look a certain way when I print them. That's a certain note. Those are just conscious decisions. And the point of that is a lot of our colleagues can spend years and not really think about specific subject matter that's germane to their aesthetic or how they actually want it to look. We try all kinds of things. And I was just having fun with it. And so I thought, well, I'll just equate it with the 12-bar blues.
Now, did you decide this would be a good way to frame some of the lectures I give, or is this something that then went on to inform your photography as you went forward?
It did both.
Yeah. How so?
I teach in a university in Texas. I live on the Texas-Louisiana border, and I've been there 30 years, and I give that lecture to students. And most of the students are far more interested in music than they are in photography.
Right,
so it's a way to maybe sometimes connect, but also it's the way I think. And I think your only value to your colleagues, to yourself, or to students, if you're in that teaching world, is to tell them the truth. Tell them the truth as you've experienced it, and let them follow their own bliss, shall we say. Mm-hmm. But just open up possibilities. So that's my theory on the 12-bar blues.
Mm-hmm.
What got you into taking pictures?
Well, my mom, which is a decidedly non-Texas thing to tell you, but we were a single parent household for most of my adolescence and my teen years, and my mom was a photographer in a small town. And some of my earliest memories are standing on a stool in the kitchen with an orange light. That'd be a safe light in the dark room. She'd turn our kitchen into a dark room, and my sister and I would stand there and rock trays. And so I grew up around it. And then it was just as I was entering college and not having a real focus, like a lot of people, that I borrowed her camera. Mm-hmm. I hadn't paid too much attention. That's just something my mom did. And then she said, I did some photographs of some guys fishing down on the river, had them processed, took them to her, and showed them. And she said, and I think I was 19 at that point, she said, well, honey, you have a nice sense of light. You have a good eye. And I thought, I do? And I thought, well, that's great. I have a good sense of light, a good eye. And I never looked back. Mm. So it's not an extraordinarily explosive story. It's just the truth. Good parenting.
I always like hearing, I mean, it comes up time and time again in our interviews, the relationship to photography and the parents.
Yeah.
In this case, the mother, often the father, even grandfathers. But just that, I love to hear that. I love to hear how that
Your mom
where
used
that's born. Yeah.
Your mom used a phrase that I'd never heard. That was kind of saying you have a good eye. That's
Good
common.
eye,
She said you have a good sense of light.
Yeah.
And that's the clue right there.
Yeah.
She was a photographer.
She was, and I think she was a closet artist, but like a lot of single parents, her focus was to earn a living.
Sure.
And so she did a lot of portraits, and she paid a lot of attention to the use of light and to the use of natural light. It wasn't so much the artificial world. She photographed a lot of children. She photographed them outside before it became so prevalent, and it was interesting.
Would you say I would say they do, but do you say your photos have humor?
Mine?
Yeah.
Some of them. I like to think of them as sly humor, but other people would argue that that's not so sly.
All right.
But
and is that something that is conscious as you're developing that photo? And
my photographs consciously, or I try to pay attention to the real world, and occasionally I'll construct things, but I generally work in the real world, and I look for those slightly awkward, askew moments where the world is completely ordinary, what you're looking at, yet it's completely mysterious at the same time. And it's a nebulous thing to talk about. I can't really explain it any clearer to you. It's just, you just know it. Sometimes it's a gesture. Sometimes it's a proximity of the context of what's in that frame. It's a number of things. But my world, or my life resides, on the sort of outskirts of the bizarre art world rather than the commercial world. And there's a certain freedom to try and evolve both projects and to evolve your own sort of aesthetic, so to speak. And a lot of my influences came from literature and folk art, and particularly African-American Southern folk art, which is just so visceral.
Yeah.
I mean, just, it ain't always pretty, boys.
Yeah. And from the literature, can you mention any of the writers that come to mind?
I love William Butler Yeats, and I think of him often. I like soft light. I use dark light a lot, and I think of his poem "Had I the Heaven's Embroidered Cloths, Inwrought with golden and silver light, the blue, the dim, the dark cloth of night and light and the half-light." I have it written on my darkroom wall. It sort of gives me a permission on occasion to use light that my colleagues would never use, if you're formally trained. But I think spotty, diffuse, sharp, foggy, it's all good.
All good.
It's all good.
I think we just found a title for this show. It's all good.
Good title.
Yeah, good title. Totally.
It's an observation. I don't even know how you could respond to this, but one of the things that I picked up in the 2 days of being in this room is that you were sitting over in the corner doing portfolio reviews for a good deal of time. And I cannot tell you, we had a lot of photographers come through here, very good photographers, the best in the biz, some top names. And I cannot tell you how many people, as they come in and go, "Make sure you talk to Keith. He's the best photographer here." Seriously.
I'm the only one who's got the Southern
They want to hear
accent.
the accent, yeah.
I'm not joking. Seriously, you've been very well recognized
Well,
here.
I appreciate that. My colleagues are, I shall say, uncharacteristically kind. Most of the time, they say, "What in the hell did you do there?"
Now you're represented by Howard Greenberg here in the city? Oh, that's great. Okay.
Well, he's the real deal.
Yes, he is.
And, he was a wonderful younger photographer, and, has a huge reputation, and one of the truly ethical people.
Yes.
Oh, well,
Yes.
sounds like a simple thing to say, but nowadays, anytime, that's a pretty big compliment.
Yeah, it's
truly
like
ethical. Yeah.
It's the Holy Trinity.
Yeah, right.
Ethical, kind, good,
Here you go.
caring.
Throwing smart and a little bit of money, and you're good to go, right?
Well, also he's not afraid to resurrect some what I think are great photographers who's often are deceased, that never really they were before their time, like a person like William Gedney, or he'll have shows for them, or Saul Leader, and people that were really in the trenches in the very, very beginning, and a lot of galleries nationwide, don't do that necessarily.
That's very true. Very true.
What's your feeling about the simplification of photography? You obviously have high respect for the art. And these days, everyone's got a phone and everyone's a quote-unquote photographer. It's changed what photography is. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think you can't really change that. And, one process has always replaced another in the history of photography, which is only 179 years old. The irony is each one of these processes that's been replaced has never really disappeared. And there's probably more interest in historical alternative processes than ever before. I personally think of the great mythologist Joseph Campbell when he was confronted with a computer, and he said, well, you ever taken one of those apart? He says, like angels dancing on the head of a pin. It's just amazing. And here's a man schooled in eons of cultural behavior. And I think the same thing. I think it's kind of a miracle. I use the iPhone for a lot of things. I just don't use it for my own serious, sometimes overly serious work. But I embrace it. I think the question is, that nowadays you have 2.4 billion photographs uploaded a day.
A day,
and it's how do we consume those photographs? What do they mean culturally? All those big questions. And with students, in some respects, it dumbs down photography, which in part is what this conference is about. On the other hand, ironically, it opens up untold possibilities. But as I said earlier, when I work with students, I'm always kind of wonderfully amazed that if they're properly introduced to a subject, they get really interested in something besides the iPhone. And I think of it as a tool, ultimately. And a useful tool. So...
Can I ask you a question? Other than your mom giving you some support early on, can you look back to when you felt the support of somebody who said, you know what, keep doing what you're doing. This may not be the way to get your photos on the cover of Time magazine or whatever publication or some advertisers, but keep doing what you're doing. And when you felt like you had that inner confidence to kind of just keep going forward. And,
yes. To answer your question, he's 89 years old now, still living in my town. There's a sculptor named David Cargill, and he had an interest in photography, and he was friends with my mother, and so he took an interest in my own early efforts, and he would crop my pictures, and he would say things like, well, don't always just look at photographs like a photographer. Think about like a sculpture. Think about how it would look from behind. Do all these kinds of things, and be ruthless with space. If it doesn't balance something in your picture or give important information, get it out of there. Be ruthless with space. So I had people like that, but I always thought, and this isn't self-serving, but I always thought I live in an out-of-the-way place. There's no huge museums. There's no huge infrastructure. And I would probably, if I could get the joy out of doing the work, that was going to be a big success.
Gotcha.
The fact that things have turned out much, much better than I ever dreamed is kind of amazing to me. But still, in the art world, and what makes the art world work in the world of photography, I'm a relative outsider because you're not in the main stream where all this stuff happens.
And did you feel pressure to get to pull yourself into that world and change your style?
No, I never did, but I think it's a good question. I always thought that I was like a raggedy-ass aristocrat because where I lived was muddy, full of folklore. You had 14 of the 20 poisonous subspecies of snakes in North America living in my community. 4 out of the 5 carnivorous plants.
It's a miracle you're even here.
And alligators 2 blocks away. And
I'd never leave my house.
no, think about it though. And you have white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, you have African-American imagination, you have Cajuns, rednecks, Peckerwoods. You got
What was that last one?
Peckerwoods.
Okay, I'll look that up later.
But I always thought it was a heady mixture, and you had this gumbo culture of music,
Great music.
religious affiliations, really strange stuff. You guys don't remember, but the mullet haircut, that comes from our town.
He's still rocking it a little bit.
So I thought I was a redneck aristocrat.
How about you brought up religion, and does that Southern blend of religions inform your work at all, or did you grow up with some of that?
I think so. Yeah. To tell you the truth, this is kind of a ridiculous thing to say, but occasionally I think, if I could make a picture or a body of work that resonated like some of those great old hymns, and I'm not particularly religious, but softly and tenderly, or how great thou art, or some of those great things, even a non-religious person such as myself, when I hear somebody singing that, it still gets to me.
Oh, sure.
It just gets to me. And it's supposed to, and I don't particularly want to lose that feeling, so to speak. And that's not an art school or graduate school treatise.
No, that's human nature. That's being a person.
Yeah, which I think is important. So that's the answer to your question.
Being a person's pretty important to being a photographer.
Unless you're a turtle, then it doesn't matter.
So we've been asking this question and I almost hesitate to do it here, but I'm going to ask anyway. If you had to throw out all your photos, except for one, can you do that? Could you tell us one photo you'd keep?
Well, off the top of my head, I'd probably keep the one that probably began my career, which is a photograph called Fireflies, which was actually a total mistake. But it's basically a square photograph, black and white, made at the end of the day, and it's 2 little guys in shorts in big Wellington boots standing in a swamp holding a jar of fireflies with a magnolia tree, which is basically the only thing in focus.
They blurred perfectly.
Yeah,
Those 2 kids,
and the blur, I didn't see it. I was so disappointed in the beginning when I developed the film. I was excited about it, but I didn't expect him to be so out of focus. And I showed him to my wife, who was at least 100 times smarter than I was. And she said, "Oh, honey, you ought to go print that and see what it looks like." So I went and printed it, and I showed it to her, and she said, "You ought to go print that bigger." And then she came out to the dark room, and we printed it again. And it was through her eyes I thought, this isn't at all what I intended, but this is so much better.
Wow.
Something had creeped in. So to answer your question, I'd probably
keep that one. That gets me to this question is intention, what you expect and what you get. How I guess as an artist we grow from our mistakes, and the differences between what you expect you're going to get and what you do get, and how you can value that, because a lot of people, as we were speaking about earlier, what is your favorite photo? Well, it's because I worked so hard to get that photo and I got it, even if it's not such a great photo.
Great story, lousy picture.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of, this idea of being able to reevaluate your own work, or maybe through someone else's eyes, makes a big difference.
I think so. I'm reading a wonderful book I bought at the Metropolitan Museum a couple of days ago, and it's essentially photographers talking about photographs that they missed or didn't take. And I'm thinking I'm going to use that with students.
Yeah, it's a good topic.
It's a good topic. It makes you think about perspective, subject matter, and why you miss things, or why you didn't do it in the first place.
Yeah. And now when you're in New York, is that what you do? Go to museums?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my gosh.
Catch up with stuff.
Well, I like shallow things like, going to Barney's and stuff like that. But, man, and this is not a original idea, but if I lived here, I'd go to the Metropolitan Museum every single Sunday I was alive.
Just get there early. That's all. Yeah.
I mean, it's just, but... you talk about, and MoMA. I mean, but
all of them.
or the Pierpont Morgan.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's a great museum.
Oh my gosh! I think if more of us did that on occasion, we'd be kinder, gentler animals. We'd be a little more erudite, and we'd certainly see multiple meanings in things we just pass by. You know, that's what great art does for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you got it. My God, in this city,
One
you
advantage.
got it.
That's one advantage.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Keith Quatter, absolute blast talking to you.
so much.
Thank you for joining us.
Well, my pleasure.
If Douglas Kirkland did nothing but photograph Marilyn Monroe for Look Magazine's 25th anniversary edition, we would probably still be talking about him today, but that shoot is just the tip of an incredible iceberg that includes portraits of Man Ray, Mick Jagger, Marlene Dietrich, Michael Jackson, and just about every celebrity in between. Kirkland's portrait of Charlie Chaplin is at the National Portrait Gallery in London. He shot assignments on over 150 motion picture sets, including 2001: A Space Odyssey, Titanic, and he took the iconic shot of John Travolta from Saturday Night Fever. Kirkland's list of accomplishments is far too long to go into here, but I have no doubt he still treasures the day I personally assisted him when he shot what would be the very last cover of Look magazine back in 1971. Okay, we are back at Depth of Field, and this particular interview we're about to have is interesting to me and special to me. Back in 1971, I was a senior at the School of Visual Arts, and a job came up at Look magazine, washing and drying prints in the lab. And I ran down there and was interviewed by Arthur Rothstein, who I had no idea who he was at the time, shame on me, and I was hired. And I left school actually 3 weeks early to start my career in photography, washing and drying prints in a darkroom at a magazine. And I got to know people, and they were starting to trust me and give me a little more responsibilities. And one day they said that, we have a photographer, Douglas Kirkland, who's going to be photographing a cover for us, and we'd like you to assist him. And I got together with Douglas at his studio in New York, and we photographed what would turn out to be the very last cover of Look magazine. And I have that magazine right here, and I'm with Doug Kirkland. And 47 years ago, I met this man, and here I am sitting here at the other end of my career. And comment.
I'm certain it's not the other end of your career, and it's the beginning.
Oh, I love this. Okay. This
Always a fresh beginning.
It's always a fresh beginning. Talking about fresh beginnings, Doug, you've been taking pictures now for over 6 decades. How do you stay excited after all these years? What gets you juiced at this point in the game where you say, I really like taking pictures. I still like doing this?
It's very special, and it's very deep in me. It's who Douglas Kirkland is, and that is his father liked taking pictures, although he was a tailor. He was not in the picture business, but he had different cameras at our house in Canada, where I grew up, and not too far from Niagara Falls, New York.
Uh-huh.
And I got a job at the local studio after school and on Saturdays. And I did everything from just putting prints on the dryer to whatever needed to be done, because that was the beginning of my genuine, deep interest in photography. And it remains to this day, and I'm 83, going on 84 next year. And I'm not going to stop. I love it. It's who Douglas Kirkland really is, and it's who he became. And I'm not going to walk away from that. And I've had very good fortune, and with numerous people. The Canon people have been very good to me, and their products have been very good.
You're an explorer of light, it's worth mentioning.
Yes.
I think you were one of the original explorers of light, is that correct?
I was in the first year.
Yeah.
I was asked, and that was more than 25 years ago.
And you've been with Canon ever since.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to the day my eyelids close, I'm going to continue to use Canons.
Now, you've seen the transition from film, I mean, really the nuts and bolts film, to full-tilt digital. Were you apprehensive at first? What were your feelings when digital first started coming around? And I know that you're totally digital now. Or are you?
Oh, I'm totally digital now.
Do you keep your cameras? Like, do you have a collection going back many years of the cameras you used over the years?
Yes, I do keep them, and I have many.
There's a couple things I wanted to mention. First of all, you mentioned your father, and we interview a lot of people on this show, and it never, I guess it always surprises me how many people mention their father, mostly fathers, sometimes mothers, but mostly their father, who was an part-time photographer, an amateur
Somehow
photographer.
associated with the camera photography,
it
yes.
puts it into somebody, and it makes me just wonder how people reflect on that as they continue in their career, and how do you think back to your father as all the time as a photographer? Do you kind of tribute things to him? I mean, you mentioned him right away.
One thing my dad did before I was born, he had a folding camera, a little 127 folding camera, and I have that camera still to this day.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And it was in the Great Depression years, and his dad and my father took him to Western Canada, and they made pictures with that 127 camera, and we still have those pictures, and I still have that camera, but it's all photography, and it's where I got excited. And then I worked at the local photo studio in Fort Erie, photographing weddings and babies and anything they would let me photograph.
Let me ask you about an address and see if it rings a bell. 80 West 40th Street?
Absolutely.
Okay. Alan was talking about the beginning of his career. What about that address for you? What's that mean?
80 West 40th was where I worked for Irving Penn. And he was a great influence on me, and he formed part of who Douglas Kirkland is to this day. And there's a recent book that came out by him that's from him, or of his world, and it's a thick book, and I have that at home at the top of my stack, and I have a picture of Penn on the wall. And
what was he shooting at that time? I mean, his career obviously has many phases, and he's done many things. What were you working with him at that stage?
Well, he worked with he was a Hasselblad, but he also had I think he had different
Well,
cameras.
not the cameras much, but was his fashion work, or was it the still
yes.
lifes, or
He would do anything, and that was why Penn was so incredible, because he didn't want to stay still, and he was a great inspiration to me, because that's what led to Douglas Kirkland becoming who he is and has become. And you can do anything if these hands can mold anything, and with a camera, and that's what's so spectacular.
What are you looking forward to shooting? Do you have any assignments that you want to do? Any topics you want to cover that you haven't, or you want to pursue more?
Well, I'm going to Europe in about a month to photograph something on the beaches of Normandy. And I have a friend who is in his 90s now, who was in the invasion of Normandy.
Now, when you go to Normandy, is this going to be a self-assignment? Are you just going in with an open mind? Do you have specific images you're trying to get, or are you just going to be open to whatever comes before you?
I've been in Normandy, but to go and be with the youngest man who was part of the invasion force and was there, and he's still around to this day. I'm going to be there, and our son is going to be there, Mark Kirkland, who's became an animator and has been with The Simpsons for 28 years now.
That's a good gig, yeah.
Yeah, he's a very Mark Kirkland. And so the Kirklands go on, what am I to say?
That's great. Who was the most challenging person you photographed? Because you photographed a lot of personalities. I imagine there were a couple of real doozies you had. Who gave you the biggest fight that you walked away and said, I got the shot?
I never have And I don't feel I've ever had a great fight because I've won them all. And frankly, photography is my friend, and it's who I am. And photography will always mean that to me.
Can we speak a little bit about working on movie sets? I know that you've shot on sets for some pretty incredible movies over the years. When you're there, do you kind of disappear next to the boom operator, or do you kind of take over and do setup shots? And what's your experience in working with Kubrick and others?
Okay. Stanley Kubrick was a wonderful man, and he had been a Look magazine photographer.
Yes, that's right. From the Bronx. Yeah.
And he welcomed me to 2000. I guess that was 2000. It was his film at that time, and he welcomed me and made me comfortable, and he was glad I was there, and he was a revelation to me, because, and another person was Jim Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
And
Titanic.
Titanic.
Yeah.
And I did a book on that.
Yeah.
And
they're both perfectionists.
They're brilliant perfectionists. And Jim is still around. Unfortunately, Stanley is not. And I was very close with him, and all these people are inspirations. That's who I would like to be. I don't want to take their place, but they are an inspiration. And when you think of the perfect picture, what would that be? And it depends on the subject and understanding who they are and what they represent. And that's where great photography comes from. And that explains many things that words can do on some occasions, but only a brilliant picture can frequently do on others.
Let me ask you about perhaps working with what we call famous people or actors, and if you're on set. And compared to working with a regular person, do you these are phrases that I hesitate to use, but do you approach them differently, or once the doors are closed, is everything kind of on equal footing? And when you try to get reactions, expressions, emotions out of people, do you approach them in different ways?
Honestly, the bottom line is whomever you are with, as you speak with me, you show sincerity. And that's what I do with the camera as well. Show sincerity and a desire to get it right and get it right in the camera. And I want them to feel their time is worthwhile with Douglas Kirkland.
I just wanted to throw one thing out. We were talking about movies. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the famous photograph of John Travolta from Saturday Night Fever that became the bedroom poster of every kid who grew up in the 70s. That's your photo, am I correct?
Yes,
okay.
it is,
Just wondering. Now, you talked about Penn perhaps in the 50s. We're talking Travolta in the 70s and Kubrick. Would you say there's a golden age? Was there a golden age for photography? Yeah. Is there a golden age? I mean, we had, the movie Blow Up and, the 60s and the fashion in London. Looking back, would you say there was a golden era for you?
The golden era is what you make it, and you find it, and you discover it, and you make the most out of it.
Douglas, you are a gentleman and a legend. I can't find
thank you.
Any words that describe you. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you, and I'm very moved by the fact you wanted to hear my words, and it's from my heart and soul.
Thank you so much. Douglas Kirkland, thank you, sir. Personally speaking, I've had a lot of really wonderful moments during the show, but seeing Doug Kirkland again and sitting and chatting with him is just absolutely a wonderful, wonderful experience. We're going to take a short break and return with a segment of our conversation with Joyce Tenneson from the 2018 Optic Conference hosted by B&H.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. Send us a tweet at BHPhotoVideo, hashtag BHPhotoPodcast.
Joyce Tenneson has photographed magazine covers for Time, Life, Newsweek, Premiere, Esquire, and the New York Times Magazine, and she's well recognized for her distinctive style of fine art photography. Her large format Polaroid and silver gelatin portraits, often of women, have been lauded the world over, and her book, Wise Women, was the best-selling photography book of 2002. Enigmatic, timeless, sensuous, and haunting are just some of the words used to describe her work. But like so many greats, her humility, insight, and willingness to experiment are what we found so appealing. With Joyce, we spoke mostly of her recent work, photographing landscapes and trees, and her use of gold leaf in her prints. Join us as we speak with Joyce. You've worked on 16 books, which means at least 16 projects you've had. Are you clear when a project is finished? Because I know I've worked on various projects over time, and sometimes I'm very clear, this is it. I just took the last picture. It feels okay, and sometimes I'm not really quite sure. What's your experience of that?
For me, it's absolutely clear. When I finish a project, I intuitively know it. And in a way, it's a relief because I work really hard, as we all do when we're, and I give myself a year to 2 years for a project max. And so I drive myself to finish the work like that. Mm-hmm. And I really, when the project, there's two parts of when the project is over, as you know. It's when the shooting of the project is over.
Right.
Hopefully in a year maybe. And then the next year, it's the editing and it's deciding, what is the book going to look like and working on all of that. And then getting the shows booked around to exhibit them in different cities. And then the part I like the least, which is helping to market it. But that's the cycle,
sure.
So I think that's what a lot of younger photographers don't realize is that the shooting is only one part of it. That is in general, the easy, fun, creative part. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But in order to be successful, you have to continue and see that whole project through. But then when that's done, you're really free to start something new.
Do you find yourself during that year of editing and all this other stuff, the post-shooting part of it, are you still taking pictures or do you back away from your camera a lot at that point?
Well, I always think, maybe another great picture will come up and I can throw it in at the last minute. But I might do fun shooting, but I only do my serious shooting when I can see the project.
Okay.
And I usually start off with the cover. It's interesting. I will challenge myself by mocking up a cover, like, Transformations, for example. And I have a cover image there, or for Wise Women, and I put it over my work desk. And it may not be the cover in the end, but it has the title and the picture, and there's something about it.
You establish a framework and a starting point.
A starting point, and I know, because I'm extremely disciplined, that I will finish that project. And seeing it every day, it's like it's already it's happening.
It makes it real.
It makes it real. And then I'm so thrilled when it's on press, and I've gone on press with most of my books. It's very scary because, the presses go for 24 hours depending how big the print run, is going to be. But mine have always been at least 10,000 for a print run, and Wise Women, multiple, reprints on it. And then it dries back, and it doesn't look exactly the way it looked when at midnight when you were signing those sheets.
I've been there. I know that.
You know that, right?
Yes.
And then, but when that book is out and it's in the stores and it is, hopefully there's a show of it that's up, in the next months or whatever, I feel like. It's this wonderful feeling. Also frightening because then you think, what if I never get inspired again. And you
Yeah.
do have that feeling.
Sure.
And I've talked to a lot of other, photographers, and they have the same feeling. Because, let's face it, you can't will something that's really creative into
yeah.
existence.
Yeah.
You could choose some project that's kind of, more of an easy kind of thing, but to do something really new is quite a.
And what for you is the final product of a photo always the print?
Yes, I love printing. I have a wonderful 2,000 square foot studio, and I've always been lucky in having smart young assistants, and I love my assistants. I mean, they become like part of the family, and we stay friendly for the rest of our lives. And I like them to stay for at least 3 to 5 years, and then of course they want to have their own career, but. Honestly,
Selfish. Yes.
yes, yeah. And I do what I can to help them launch them into that. But I feel so sad when someone I've been working with, because it's not like a professional relationship. You're sitting right next to them, and you're sharing. You're sharing, and they're having boyfriend troubles, and I have somebody who just died in my family, or whatever. It's so complex and
Do you find that many of your assistants end up emulating you or attempt to? And if they do you discourage them to go find your own eyes?
Good question. Some of my former students try to emulate me or whatever, but my assistants don't, because they know that what I really think is important for any creative person is to find their own voice.
Sure.
And that ultimately that makes you the most happy and probably the most successful, because I think copying somebody just never really lasts that long. Mm-hmm. It has to come from inside your own self.
Yeah. Can we discuss a little bit about some of the technique for the tree photos and how you get the look that you've achieved?
Yes. When I moved to Maine, it was such a departure and such a new chapter in my life that when I started photographing the trees in the fog, I was really enlivened, and I loved going out in the early morning, and I really felt like it was like some kind of magic. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing in front of my lens. And I could see it as a series, and I could see what I wanted it to be is a show that when people walked in, that they were somehow touched. And
So you were thinking of it at that point as an exhibit,
as
because
an
people
exhibit.
that come into it, yeah.
Because they do create some kind of a atmosphere in the same way that as I was photographing them in the fog, and I'm sure you've all been out there, it is a magical atmosphere, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to communicate that in this exhibit, which I could see in my mind. And so then I had to figure out, well, how do I want to print them? And because I think for any art, the form, the content, and the ultimate way of expressing it, for a photographer, the way you print it, is it going to be black and white? Is it going to be color? Is it going to be on what kind of paper? How big? How whatever? And I had taught alternative process when I first started teaching photography, and so I was aware of all the options. And so I kept trying to think of how am I going to print these tree photos. And I had taken a trip to Peru right before I started photographing the trees, and I was so impressed by the way the Incan culture had made gold sculptures and artwork to speak to the gods. And they felt that gold, because it was some kind of an alchemical process that they didn't really understand, had a special ability to be able to transcend our, small universe and speak directly to the gods. And so as I was thinking about the trees, I was like, well, gosh, I've always been trying to speak to the gods. I'm teasing a bit, but I've always wanted my work to have a transcendent edge to it. And so I thought, well, what if these were gold? And so I spent a year teaching myself how to do gold leaf. And it really, I made so many mistakes and I threw so many things away and I got frustrated. But there is a part of me that it is very disciplined and I don't take no for an answer easily. And I did get a process that worked for me, and I did a show of the trees on gold leaf, and it did create that feeling that I had seen in my head. And a lot of men, in particular, came up to me afterwards, and I felt particularly, warmed by that, saying that they had tears behind their eyes. There was something about that walking through the gallery that they felt very touched by it, and they loved it. And some of them wanted to have one, and
Which is even nicer.
which was
That's a beautiful thing.
it's
Yes.
How big were the prints? I mean, I'm sure they're different sizes, but generally?
they were 30 by 40.
30 by 40, okay.
Yeah.
To make these prints on the gold leaf, what considerations did you have to make, or what did you have to learn that distinguished from the previous printing you had
Well,
been
I had to
done?
learn how to put the gold down, and
Yeah.
then I had to learn how to print on some kind of a transparent medium,
Okay.
or like Japanese kozo paper, which I tried too, and to get that gold to come through the print, and then I had to learn how to preserve it and what kind of varnishes to put on so that it seals the image.
Gold leaf is the strangest material. It's
It is
very weird.
It is a weird material and very hard to tame.
Yeah.
And so, as I mentioned, it did take over a year to figure out how to even be successful on a really small image. And then once I got that going, I was able to get them bigger. And then I started to get an allergic reaction to some of the varnish I was using. Because years of being in early on the dark room and exposed to a lot of the chemistry.
It turns you hypersensitive in some ways. Yeah, that's
a
what
lot
happens.
of people get bad allergies. So now what I do is that I'll make a small image and scan it, and then I can then have a digital file and I can have them printed on metal. But I also have the large Canon printers, and they have a metal paper, which I found a year ago, which is 44 by whatever. And so the prints that I showed in Norway last month were all, 44 by 60 inches. Huge. And they created their own kind of energy field. And, I just had them up with, magnets. So they weren't framed in glass, and they were so present. And that was a great experience to bring them to another country where they had not seen the gold trees. And the metal paper actually translated that, and the size. They were almost tree-like.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine the size would be important.
It was
in this
very
case.
Scale
important.
is
The
a huge
scale.
element of that. Sure.
So that was so within the printing of the gold trees, I started off with the gold leaf, and now I'm using the metallic paper, and each of them is different, and honestly, I don't know which one I like better. It's just a process.
Two different versions, variations.
Yeah, and having a very different. I think people respond to them differently. I think the gold leaf was more precious, and people were touched by wanting to know how they were done. Whereas the large metallic pieces, I think people they kind of boomeranged off. They were so big.
Yeah.
And,
Not that this is really part of the heart of this conversation, but did you see a difference in sales? Did people respond to one more than the other necessarily, or is that something you didn't even factor in? I mean,
I never think about sales when I'm doing.
No, of
I don't
course.
think
No, I didn't-
anyone
I didn't
does.
think that
right?
way.
You're
yeah.
just hoping that they're
I'm
good.
just kind of curious.
I just
yeah.
hoping that they're
received.
interesting and that they speak to other people. And honestly, both of those processes seem to have their own audience
Right,
and call to different kinds of people.
And are you, speaking of the cycles of projects and where you are, where are you right now? Do you have a...
Well, in the lecture that I just gave here, I ended it with a new series I've just started on clouds. And if you had told me 10 years ago I'd do a cloud series, I'd say you're crazy. But of course, I've been photographing them forever. Don't you?
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
every time I
Somewhere or the other,
teach in Santa Fe and I look up, the clouds are so amazing. But every state has a different wherever. But I'd always admired the Stieglitz equivalents. That series that's so much a part of art history and that is housed at the National Gallery. But I just thought, well, I don't want to compete with Stieglitz or whatever. But I'm now doing them with the gold. And so it just progressed naturally. I just started, I thought, I had so many cloud pictures, but also in Maine, I look out on Rockport Harbor. And
Keep rubbing it in. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Keep rubbing it in.
The clouds from morning to night are
yeah.
changing all the time. And what they say about Maine is if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. So that's also about the clouds. I mean, they're just changing. And so I started seeing them like people. And sort of in the same way that I love people and people's relationships, the trees kind of became my people for a while, and now the clouds. I'm just waiting to see what new people I'm going to meet every day.
Now, are the trees getting a little jealous, and are you just decided I'm done with you guys for now, or do you ever know going back to the woods and?
That's right. I don't know. I once that show and book is out, it really does seem to put
over.
closure.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
And so, and who knows? I do have some. I keep a notebook all the time, and I'm a journal writer, and so I have a notebook that's just for new ideas. And the whole time that I've been in New York the past week, I've practically filled a notebook with new ideas that just boomeranging off of different stimulus from being here. I was at the Metropolitan and I saw the Heavenly Bodies show, which was amazing. And so that you can't help but be in new places and have it affect you. And I started thinking back on my past when I looked at the Heavenly Bodies show, because that was a show that was about designers, but designers pretty much, I believe, all of whom were brought up Catholics.
Yeah.
Well, I was too, and I've been, I left immediately when I was 17, and now I would call myself a Buddhist or something. But so I felt so distant from that. But when I went to that show, I felt, oh my God, this is me. Or I could see, all of us, whoever we were brought up, as the psychologists are right, it's just a lot that's established at a
you
very
can't shake it. Yeah.
You can't shake it.
Yeah.
And so I felt really happy about that. And the only thing I felt irritated at myself is that I didn't let that show more, because I always was like, no, I'm a neutral figure. I'm a Buddhist, but I really admired those designers for letting that inner territory that had affected them really come out.
Let it
And
out.
And I recognized a lot of my early self in that. I did.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question we've been asking? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
We've been asking all the photographers this kind of cheesy question, but it's been getting some good responses. So if you had to throw away every single one of your photos except for one, could you say which one it would be?
There are a couple, but I think it would be the image of Suzanne in the chair that has been published a lot. And she's sitting half nude or wrapped in fabric in a chair and looking back at the camera.
I think, yeah, okay. I think I know which one that is.
And the one that you have on this sheet that you printed out, Suzanne also in contortion, which was the cover
I love that picture.
of Transformations.
Yeah.
Another one would be from my book Light Warriors, the picture of Dasha with the two doves on her shoulders. That has, those come to mind right away.
And why would you say those necessarily? And maybe there's not a simple answer, but just...
I think that I have had so much feedback from people from different countries, because of course now with email and all of that the response to those three pictures in particular has been never ending and in a positive way, and somehow speaks to people in different countries. So there's got to be some kind of universal energy that
A few photographers have, when we asked this question, they referred to what happened when they took that photo. So there was a memory. Others, because it seemed to define them. It sounds like they're what the photos are giving back to you. Like they're out there in the world, people respond, and then what's coming back to you is something that's important.
I think long term that is a wonderful part of being part of this new global community. I know that Wise Women is the book that I've had the most response from people around the world, and maybe it's because it came out, when social media was already very present. But it tends to be a book that is given to women who might be going, well, often it's a birthday present or something, but many of whom are not well, like are suffering from cancer, and I will get emails from them saying, thank you so much for doing Wise Women. I got it as a gift, and I, just was operated on for breast cancer or whatever it is. And having that book near me has made me feel so much better. And now, when I did that book, I never thought that would ever happen. I just was doing it to try to understand who I would be in 10, 15, 20 years, and so that is a wonderful part of my life, I think, is that relationship that has been built thanks to, social media, particularly email, because it is a global community now, and books do travel and are given as gifts, and so that is a wonderful circle, isn't it?
So maybe as a final question, when you went to do Wise Women, it was part of the process was to maybe find out who you would be, and who are you? I mean,
absolutely, and all of my books have had that organic kind of beginning of really self-probing, but at something about who I was at that point in my life, and mining that territory. So when I got to the age of worrying about who I'd be when the words like gone to seed or over the hill might have been used in former generations, not now. No one would dare say that now. But
60's the new 20. Right?
That's right. 60's the new 20. But so organically, when my show opened, my Light Warriors show opened, that my assistant said to me, so what are we going to do next? I just, without even thinking, and I was kind of jolted, and I said, well, let's go to 100.
There you go.
Because...
why not?
Well, it just came out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh, God, I don't want to do another book. I'm so tired and all of that. And then I thought, I'll just do this little portfolio and see. And I showed it to a couple of my, because I photo editor friends in New York. And I just said, what do you think? Do you think this has legs? Do you think people would be interested? And they were like, oh, Joyce, I think you've hit on something. So took a big, deep breath and said, okay. and I lay out, when I have a project, I lay it out, and it's how long am I going to have to do this? And I have a big calendar, and it's month by month. Where do I have to be at the end of each month?
Oh, wow.
And
really?
Wow. So
Interesting.
I had to be in those 10 cities within that year, and how to fund that, because, obviously I teach, I have exhibits, I have books, etc. But to do what I try with the book is to keep the expenses down. So when I did, because it is self-funded, even though from when I was with Time Warner Publishers and they did 8 of my books, I would get an advance. But that that's 1 month,
Right.
and. So for Wise Women, I had so many students that I had stayed in touch with. And so each city I stayed with a former student and I traded them a print.
Oh.
And so that made it easy. And
If you want to stay by my place, I'll take a print.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we know we have a spare bedroom. Yeah.
And you live right in New York?
No, but I'll drive you back and forth.
All right. Okay.
All right. It's 45
deal.
minutes we can be back there, okay?
It's a deal.
All right.
Actually, I
You
live
stay for a night and I have
All
a
right.
print, okay?
Okay.
Great.
That's
Cool.
great.
I live in New York. I'm going to take her from you. All right, then.
Okay.
But what I found interesting is that you, even at that stage in your career, you wanted to take your still nascent idea to editors and bounce them off and see what you thought, because obviously, you had enough of a track record and experience to say, I guess my point is I give you a lot of credit, and I also, for people listening, you always have to ask around and see what people think and get feedback. And
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And it's always so important to have a group of friends around whose opinion you trust. I always, when I start out for a project, I want some people that I trust to look at it. And because I want them, I enjoy the feedback. I really do. And because sometimes I may be going down the wrong path. I mean, it's for all of us, right? Wouldn't you rather know it?
Have you had people tell you are going down the wrong path?
I was just going to ask you that. Now, have you ever had a thing where people are going, and then you decide, you go, no, you're wrong?
I have when I've been editing, for example, that I always try to edit myself, and then I will go to a graphic designer at the end. And or I'll ask friends too. Editing, as you know, is it can make or break a project. But it's hard to, after you've laid something out, to have somebody come and say, "Oh gosh, that I don't think."
It's also the smartest thing you can do.
It is.
Because you cannot be objective about that.
You can't. Some of the images are too personal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's something very, very important, I think, for just a little sideline here. A lot of photographs. It took me a long time to understand that. Sometimes you get a picture, and the big deal is that you actually are able to get it. It may not be good, but it's got such a good story behind everything
Right.
else.
And that's all you can see.
And that's it. And to you, it's amazing. And you put it in your portfolio, you're showing it around. It's not a good picture.
It's not. I've seen that
It's a great
many times.
story, but no. And I think that is probably one of the hardest things for anybody in the arts to be able to get around. Look at it and say, okay, let's be honest now. Is it? Nah.
No. And I think that's why a good editor is so important, because they will see it in a neutral way.
I'm going to throw something else that my mentor, Marty Pedersen, publisher of Graphies, told me. He was my mentor.
He's a wonderful editor, too.
Yes, he is.
Yes.
And he told me something which never left me. And he said that you are going to be judged by the weakest picture in your portfolio. And that's what I look for. He goes, I see great photographs all the time. And when I see a new book, I look at all the good stuff and I go, okay, where's the weak one? Because that photograph shows what that person will consider good enough to turn in. So if they have 20 killers and there's a dog at the end, there's a very good chance I'm going to get that dog when the person comes back from assignment, because they're willing to show me that now.
Oh.
And I thought that was
That's complex thinking.
That is. And that's from seeing a lot of portfolios. And he says, oh, that proves it out for me. I look
Very
for that weak
interesting.
picture. That's the one I'm looking for.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my. Interesting.
Good takeaway.
Good takeaway.
Okay, we can take away with that, though.
Take it away. All right. Joyce, it's been an absolute blast talking with you. We've
I've
been
had a
waiting
blast.
for this.
Yeah.
Good.
I've had a
totally,
blast.
totally.
Yeah, no,
Thank
you
you so
guys
much.
are great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any exhibits we can tell our listeners to look for, or
Yes,
where
well,
they can
if
find your
you're-
books, et cetera, et cetera?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Amazon has them all.
Okay.
And if you're coming to Midcoast, Maine, I have a show opening on July 6th.
Oh, okay.
So please come up to Maine and have some of our famous lobster and blueberry pie. Yes, and it'll be up for the month. So
Where is the show?
it's at Dowling Walsh
Dowling Walsh,
Gallery
okay.
in Rockland, and it's right across the street from the Farnsworth Museum.
Oh,
Okay.
wonderful.
Yep.
Alrighty.
I can tell you my favorite show that I've ever had, and
Yeah.
that was not long ago. 2 years ago, I had a show in Stockholm, and it was a retrospective, and there were 5 different galleries, rooms, and I worked on it with the curators for a year and a half, and I'm half Swedish. On my my father's side, my grandparents were born in Sweden, and that show were all life-size women from my 3 books, Transformations, Light Warriors, and Wise Women. And walking into that gallery with these, they looked like light boxes of life-size images, was, to me, the peak moment in my life, really. And I went with my son and my oldest granddaughter, and to walk into that and see it candlelit, even though I had been, there and helping to
Set it up,
to
yeah.
set it
Yeah,
up,
install
and
it, yeah.
all. Still, when it was all done, and
Yeah.
actually, there's a little video on my homepage with that, a 3-minute video of the opening.
Gotta
So
catch that.
please,
Yeah, take a look.
And your website
at it.
is?
just my last name, Tenneson.com.
Okay.
Okay.
And spell Tenneson, please.
Tenneson. Yes.
That's right. Well, there was a famous poet called
course.
Alfred Lord Tennyson,
Yeah.
and guess what? He used a Y.
Y, yeah.
And do you know that my computer still tries to correct me?
So does mine, but I'm not going to tell you what it calls me.
So, okay, all right.
That's great.
This has been so fun. Thank you guys
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much for
Wonderful.
joining us.
Wonderful.
Alrighty.
Great.
Thanks, Joyce.
My pleasure.
Okay, that wraps up another episode of the B&H Photography Podcast. We thank Keith Carter, Joyce Tenneson, and Doug Kirkland, and remind you to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Overcast, Stitcher, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. And stay tuned for more details on our upcoming B&H Photography Podcast Fujifilm X-H1 sweepstakes. And as always, on behalf of John, Jason, and myself, thank you so much for joining us today.